question here from Magali from Blotnitz. How can low-pay staff members, example cleaners, etc., claim TERS relief, specifically where the salary is lower than the TERS minimum benefits?
The TERS minimum is 3,500, and that will pay out. So normally what happens, the people, they pay it back to the school, which we will pay it back. Some people don't have full-time jobs, so that's why they get less than the minimum, the 3,500. But that must be paid back to the funds. You cannot keep it as, maybe you have 3 part-time jobs. You cannot keep that money.
No. I see Jimmy's thing is
obviously.
Sorry,
they can
continue.
Claim. But the minimum that will be paid up is 3,500.
I see Jimmy. Thank you, Santi. I see Jimmy has posted another question, but it relates to the previous answer. So I'm going to do something creative here. Jimmy, I'm going to allow you to talk and actually ask your question and frame your question. All right, go for it.
And Selvin, can I ask you a favor? I see the next question after that is also a TERS one. I just want to fill up in that, and we can finish with the TERS. The process for applying for TERS is very easy. You contact the UIF and you send an email, and they will send you the documents. But you have to be registered with the UIF. Your staff have to be registered for that. There's one more TERS question, I think. If the SGB have not paid the UIF for employees, then the employees cannot claim TERS. Someone said that, I suppose. Yes, I know there is some instances where the employer did not pay, but the employees did. And then they must pay in a certain amount before the TERS will be paid over.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Santi. Jimmy, I'm giving you an opportunity to ask your question and frame it in the context of your previous question. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really related to the comment around openness around the school's financial position. We know, and many people will tell you, how it is a closed secret in many instances, in some cases where people even get a sealed envelope to say, don't divulge this to anybody else. Therefore, related to the issue of openness around finances, one, that was a question, a naughty question, I guess, like Tony would say. And then the force majeure issue was more related to the protection potentially of the SGP and the school from litigious parents who might say, I've paid, and some might even have paid up front, to now say, I claim back what I paid. And so the inclusion of such a clause would provide the school with some kind of legal backing if it were to come to court. Thanks.
Thanks, Selvin.
Any responses to Jimmy, David?
So just Jimmy's not making this this hypothetical situation that this parent would pay and then want the money back. But actual fact, we've had a case just like that, where a parent, paid in full and now has their businesses, restaurant businesses is non-functioning, and they're saying, well, like, we need our money back now, So it's put the governing body in quite a difficult position to think about, well, what is the fairness and how would they proceed? They haven't made a decision yet, but it's an interesting question.
That is interesting, David, because you cannot, if you are liquidated, how semis geliquideer word, then you cannot liquidated. You cannot ask your money back from the state. You kan nie jou belastinggeld terugeis nie, and school fees are statutory. So that will be interesting to see what happens there. But I'll be very surprised. That comes, yeah.
It comes back, yeah.
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 May I throw a spanner in the works?
Please, Tony, unlike you.
School fees are due on the first day of the year. That we know. Most people make an arrangement that to accommodate their parents that they can pay in 10 or how many ever 11 installments. All the way through the year, a parent can apply for school fee exemption. I wonder whether a court would not be very, very willing to listen to a parent who says, my circumstances have so changed. My circumstances have so changed that if I were paying month by month, I would have to apply for school fee exemption. I'm putting that out there because I know, David de Korte, that there are other schools who are experiencing exactly what you have. And I think in the interests of compassion, one should really, yes, I know it cuts both ways, but in the interests of compassion, to help a particular person restart their business, come to some arrangement. That would be my argument. I don't know how legal it is. Perhaps Santi and Jimmy can help us there.
Tony, can I just, before Santi them respond, that is why we advised governing bodies and informed them that parents can actually, where we normally had a once-off application for school fee exemption or partial exemption of school fees, be allowed to do so later in the year because of the changing circumstances that the parents find themselves in now. So the governing body must then, just as they did during the first round, once again consider those applications where the financial position of parents has changed drastically for whatever reason, and make a decision based on the facts that they find such an application. Okay.
I see there's a very interesting comment from Marley. She's been pressed articles that the TERS relief has now been extended to non-UIF registered staff. She says, was it fake news? Tony, you say, you like asof dit so is. Op watter gronde sal dit wees? Dit is toch 'n fonds. Daar is nie eens genoeg fondse meer oor vir die gewone geregistreerde persone.
It seems to me, and our audience must accept that FEDSAS has service to governing bodies throughout the country. Now, it seems as though, and please, I'm not casting aspersions against anybody, but it seems as though some schools may have been withdrawing that little bit of UIF payment, but have for some reason or another neglected to pay it. We can't then hold the employee accountable because the employer has neglected to do their duty. And I think our government is absolutely right as far as that's concerned. So Magali, I think, is absolutely right. I've heard of schools that for some reason or another have been basically in trouble with SARS for that reason, but have tried to correct it in the interim.
Okay. Wow. I hope there are, I'm just checking if there are more questions, Santi, on your side.
There's one, how to deal with comorbidities for SGB employees if the SGB does not have enough funds. That is an open question, as most people will ask them to go on unpaid leave. Tony, ek sal bly as jy my kan aanvul hier, but it's tricky because you have the problem that you have to have the teachers that put them to give online learning. Everybody cannot do online learning, so they have systems how to carry on teaching while at home, but it's not always possible. And then the SGB is in the position that they have to put their employees on unpaid leave or a small percentage of that. David, as jy het my kan aanvul, sal ek bly wees daar.
Yeah. Santi, I just want to say that Tony earlier commented on the fact that you don't want to distinguish between, we need to distinguish between state-owned educators and then governing body employed educators. I think when looking at comorbidities, we need to do the same. What do we expect of a teacher in a governing body post? And what do we expect from a person in the state post with comorbidities? I think we should expect the same from both of them. They need to indicate, and I know in the Western Cape head of department made it very clear that once a person has been positively identified with a comorbidity based on a medical report, not a medical statement, a medical report, then that person must indicate how are you as an educator see to it that your learners are not disadvantaged by your absence. There are ways that you need to look at, and it is not only by way of online or that kind of teaching, but you need to provide them. You are not on holiday, so you need to show to the head of the department or your district, how will you continue to service your children in order to continue the learning process. Now, the same applies, as far as I'm concerned, also to those in governing body positions, especially if the governing body continues to pay their salaries. Tony?
Selwyn, if I may, I would like to add to what my colleagues have been saying and bring in Jimmy Slinger's force majeure thing. If you think of it, that the force majeure is not part of everyone's contract of employment. So Jimmy is actually raising a flag that we have to consider very carefully. The same thing is true that when the governing body even considers changing its approach to its employees, it has to go back to its contracts. And those contracts are in force. And yes, it's a very difficult situation, I beg your pardon, a very difficult situation, but absolutely critical that when they are renegotiating the contracts, at least one clause should state, as for the PAM document or as for state employees. And once that is there, then the negotiation can continue. But of course, we would advise governing bodies to be very circumspect. You can't expect people to behave like state employees if their contract is different.
Santi, thank you. Go for it, David.
Sorry, so I just wanted to, if we can just jump back to what Henry was saying about parents who now find themselves in a situation where they can't pay school fees and that they need to apply for a subsidy. So I think maybe a little thought needs to be put into that, because one of the problems with that is once they've applied for the subsidy has been granted, parents are quite loath to then come back to the school when their financial situation has improved and go, yeah, actually, I don't need the subsidy anymore. They're just too happy to have it. And so, I would encourage Tony's approach of communication with parents when they do come in to apply for a subsidy. And if their businesses are businesses which maybe the state president yesterday indicated are going to be operational again, then they don't need a subsidy. What they need is a holiday. And they can come back and start paying again maybe in August when their the hairdressing business is kicked off again. So I think we just to caution people watching the program and say that maybe before you have the subsidy form handed over, you just have a conversation as to what their prospects are, and is their business likely to bounce back in 2020, and would they be able to pay fees before the end of the year, rather than fill the subsidy form in and then lose all the money. Just a thought.
Good comment, David.
Santi, I see there's another question for you.
Sorry, I must read it aloud. We struggled to get funds that was floating in our SARS account allocated. Will this impact TERS payouts? Is it a different SARS and UIF, different departments? I cannot offer SARS, so if that happens, please let me know. But I think that's a question I would like to go into and answer later. Will there be an opportunity, Selwyn, that we can answer questions like that later on to the attendees?
Yes, we can. We can make known to you the question. It comes from Branwell Swartz, the principal at Heathfield Primary.
Okay. I will definitely would like to. Tony, do you have an input on that? You always have an input. You are muted.
I think Branwell knows us. He's from the Western Cape. I wonder if he doesn't want to make contact with us directly. Because I'm not sure I fully understand the question, and that's just me with my input.
I see it as they've got money, but it's in SARS, but they can't get it out there, and they want to shift it maybe. If they are registered, it won't have an impact on your payout. If you get what you get from UIF, that's all. They don't really care if there's extra money. SARS will keep that for later.
I get you. The end.
I got the SGB.
No, what Santi is actually saying is that the UIF TERS is a special entity created for these circumstances, independent of SARS.
Yeah, it's like UIF. You cannot dit twee te mekaar afspeel nie. Yeah, I don't see any new questions. This is ek reg, Selwyn?
Now, here's a question I think that's found in the chat. Colleagues, my question is on comorbidity. Yes, once the educator is at home on comorbidity, they are not on leave. How would he or she do his or own work if not provided with the tools or the trait? I guess we must advocate for provision such cases to enable the effect contact with learners to continue without hindrance.
So, can I just say something on that? So, I think they were typing in a hurry, but the idea is you now at home, and how do you carry on doing your work if, so maybe you haven't got a laptop, you haven't got data, you're not connected, you've got, obviously those are challenges for the teachers. I think it'll be up between the teacher and the school to negotiate how they're going to go forward. Maybe the school has got some capacity to lend them a computer or a laptop. I know a lot of schools with the online that were pushing online learning were providing their staff members with some data. So they gave them some money every month to buy data, or they actually just sent them data. And so those would be all kinds of things that could happen to allow for someone to operate at home. So because we're creating a very interesting moment, up until this moment, in all the years, and I'm looking at the faces in this room with the exception of Santi, who's a youngster, but the rest of the oldies, we've been around a while. So it was the only game in town. You have all your teachers at school. They're there at 7:45. No one leaves before 2:30 or 3 o'clock. You watch the clock very carefully. You don't let people off campus without signing this, that, and the other thing. Now, that whole system's on its head. You're telling your teachers not to come to school, and once they've taught their lesson, to go straight home and have as few staff on campus as possible. So I think it's about relearning a whole lot of things and doing things differently. And with the teacher at home with a comorbidity, suddenly the comorbidity isn't an issue if you have the ability to teach from home. And with technology nowadays, there are a lot more ways of doing that than there were, say, 10, 15 years ago.
Yes, and if I can also say something about that, if you as a teacher say that the school is not a safe place. You have to motivate that according to the Health and Occupational Act. So you have to say that is not a safe place before that will be looked into. Usually at this stage, if you have a comorbidity and you cannot carry on with your work, the SGB can use funds legally from the school to help your teachers. And teachers have to get out of the box. I think it's interesting, lovely times. I love this. It's exciting. We have suddenly we can think of children previously not getting into schools. We're teaching them. I think it's a great idea. There's many advances to this. But unfortunately, teachers that doesn't want to come to school and have comorbidities will not be paid. All SGBs don't have that money, and that will be legal not to pay your teachers staying at home, not working especially. Even if working, their salaries could be adapted.
Wow. Folks, it's about 4:20 in the afternoon, and I'm looking at the list of possible questions, even in the chat, and I don't see any. Do you see any other questions, Santi?
I don't see. No, this one is asked. This one is Jimmy himself. Oh, there's a new one. Does it mean that SGB should build a contingency item into school budgets? Ah, Tony, that's yours.
Well, that's the one that I mentioned. That's the one that I mentioned in the beginning, to say that they need to revisit the budget. Remember, the budgets were drawn up in 2019, and we didn't know what to expect in 2020. That is why we said the governing body then to get a motion moving to give them the authority to move funds from the one particular, as Tony put it, area of focus to another one where it is more needed. But they need to adjust their budget accordingly or to reprioritize to cover the process of teaching and learning. But they need to make that decision as a governing body because they didn't make provision for it in the previous budgets drawn up in 2019.
And I would suggest that the schools start budgeting for 2021 now. It's time that they look at the whole picture differently. And I won't be surprised if you go back to level 4 or 5 maybe. So use the opportunity to train your people and your children and the learners to study on their own, to get the discipline.
Thank you, Santi. David, any closing comments from you as we wrap things up?
So just to say once again, we've done all these years of a particular way of doing things, and one of them is budgeting, and budgeting is zero-based. So, and the rationale has always been that the parents who pay the money in that year should get the bang for their buck in that year. And so schools are not designed to make a profit or to save lots of money unless you have a particular project in mind. Now, no one had a COVID-19 project in mind for 2020. So schools came into 2020. Some schools have had building projects and have spent money, so it was per chance that some schools are in a fortunate position where they have some reserves. Other schools had saved up for a capital project which hadn't been launched yet, so they had reserves. But that was just good luck, serendipitous. And so when you're talking about a contingency, no one had a COVID-19 contingency in 2020. And I think going forward, what's happened this year is definitely going to inform schools slightly as to how they operate their budget. And maybe some organizations have a kind of a 2 or 3 month operating budget in reserve. And maybe schools need to start budgeting like that for the future. I don't know.
Wow, thank you, Tony. Thank you, David. Sorry. Then I'm going to hand to Tony for some closing comments. Tony, to you.
Thanks, Selwyn. I want to add to what David is saying. I think it's absolutely critical for every entity who employs people to make some kind of provision for what is known as a black swan, a totally unexpected, a totally disruptive event. It's known as a black swan. Now Jimmy was showing us his Latin with force majeure. We're talking about black swans, and every school has a responsibility to anticipate a black swan. That's part of your risk assessment for your entity. And so I'm supporting what David is saying. You should have at least 6 months of salaries. And that's not just the entity. Each one of us sitting around here should be able to. I mean, when I retired, I had to maintain my rather meager existence for 3 months while I waited for the payouts to start, if you know what I mean. Luckily, my wife, who is a brilliant consumer studies teacher, said to me, "You make sure you've got it right." And I listened. So, Selwyn, thank you very much once again. I want to encourage everybody to really practice Batupele. Really practice people first. More than anything, Batupele, please. Thank you also to my colleagues, because without them, this presentation wouldn't have developed. And for our legal eagle, Santi van Tonde, she's magic. And our leader is Henry Botha. So thank you very much. Donnie is probably hiding away there because he doesn't want to speak English, but that's okay. Thank you very much, Selwyn. And in closing, Viva, Partners for Possibility, Viva.
Thank you. Thank you. Santi, do you want to make some closing comments?
No, thank you, and good luck to everyone. It's challenging times, but I love challenging times, and I know there's always a good to all. And as Tony said, this too will end. Good luck. Just stay calm. Just stay calm.
Henry, the last word to you.
Yeah. I think we cannot close the session without giving credit to the way that principals responded to this particular crisis, that the challenges that came our way unexpectedly. You know, we said at the beginning, as FETSAS, when it started, principals responded in 3 ways. They were so overwhelmed that they did nothing. They didn't act at all. The second group of principals became reactive, but they reacted in a harsh way and then sometimes made wrong decisions. But credit needs to be given to those principals that were proactive and really, I mean, I'm astounded by what I see at our schools and what they've done, irrespective of where they find themselves in. So continue to do that. And perhaps just the last advert, Selwyn, they've seen our webpage on screen the whole afternoon, www.fetsas.org.za. You can go to our website and you will see a lot of COVID-19 resource material that you can still access to assist you further in this regard. Thank you, that's all. And thank you once again to you for having us as part of this leadership forum discussion.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.